Hey everybody, welcome to the Nest. I hope we are live. YouTube has a new streaming thing, so it's kind of hard to tell. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm glad to have you here. I think this is going to be awesome. I really do. Okay, so, all right. Let me first just say, that we're taking a break from Gore World today, okay? We're taking a total break from the Gorals during this time. So, I would like to try to keep the chat on topic if possible, as much as possible, okay? Because this is completely different, okay? If you get bored with the story, if you're not interested, that's okay. You can come back another time, but I'd like to try to keep the chat as much as possible on topic with what we're going to be listening to today. Okay, so hey everybody, it's great to see everybody. We got Debbie Myers Brandt, yeah, we got Moz, Fairy Nymph, Anna Gags, the Alexandier, Jennifer Levine will be on replay, awesome. Tater Tot Hot Dish, Ashley, Angela, we've got Toasty. All right. Pause on Crisco Windows, Dapper Dolls. Okay, excellent. I'm thrilled to have you all here. REM is here. Crazy Cat Lady. Yeah, how my dogs are doing today? Not bad. I got Mr. Mouth surgery to take a couple of gabapentin. Thank God. Thank God. And my arthritis guy is doing pretty well. Thank you so much for asking. Hi, Ilsk, Prunella, Wings, Sproggle, and Susie Q. All right, we got Susie Q in the house. All right. So, Tater Tot Hot Dish. Awesome to see everybody, really. Okay. Hey, Ham and Beans. I know, right? Me too. Glad you're here. Hey, Hippie Stuff Flying Monkey. They are doing better. Thank you so much, Debbie. Yeah, he looked pretty miserable when he woke up, but yeah, he's going to be fine, I think. Thank you so much, everybody, for your concern. It does mean a lot. Thank you. Okay, so this is the setting. What's on the screen right now? This is the setting of what we're going to be listening to today. Hey, Polly Rocket. So this is called a blast furnace, and this is in Youngstown, Ohio. It used to be a huge, I think it still is even, like a steel manufacturing area of the United States. So I just learned a lot about steel. Okay. Hey, Jinxie Bat. All right. So this is a blast furnace and power plant in which the blast is driven for 500 town furnaces. And about 1,500 horsepower is generated here and 36 boilers heated by gas from the furnaces. This is the Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company in Youngstown, Ohio, 1918. Okay. This particular plant was built in 1900. It shut down in 1977. And it was torn down completely in 1993. So those dates kind of do matter, okay? Why? Why do they matter? Why? Why? All right. So this is kind of like what the inside sort of looked like when they were operational, okay? And I've got a lot of stuff to show you because I think it's important to kind of get a handle on the setting. Okay. So there's this. Okay. Looks like Western Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's pretty close. Ohio. Yep. And I do have the actual furnace, which is no longer there. It's no longer there. I do have that. I have a video, and it was filmed in 1993. It was filmed in 1993 before it was demolished. No, I'm sorry. It was demolished in 97. Okay. Built in 1900, shut down in 1977, demolished in 1997. Took them 20 years to demolish it. 20 years, okay? Now, the video I'm about to show you was filmed in 1993, so 4 years before everything was demolished, okay? And again, this is just for, you know. Okay. All right. This is just to get a sense of the scene. Okay. Like what it was like. Okay. Old steel mill, so it had been shut down for quite a while at this point. Yeah. You're welcome, Flying Monkey. My pleasure. I love to do all kinds of different things. So let me just speed it up, because I just want us to get a general sense of the environment where all of this took place. There's a bridge in the background. I think that has since been taken down. You can see the train tracks here. Okay. And when this shut down, the entire town was devastated financially. It was a really stable source of income for so many people. Kind of getting a feel of like the surroundings. 1991, this one was filmed in. Okay, now we're getting a little bit more like inside of the nuts and bolts, I guess. So it shut down many years before this, so it's all rusted. It's all kinds of stuff was happening here. The mafia would take people here because it was right on the river and train tracks. So sometimes the mafia would like dump bodies here in Youngstown, Ohio. There were packs of wild dogs who used to roam in this area. Just had like their own territory. Okay, and this particular video is actually the furnace of where all of this happened, okay? You can see it's just a total mess, right? It's a mess. But this furnace no longer is standing. It's called the Jeanette furnace. You can see a fan over there. Okay. Like just a mess. Oh, like a rickety walkway kinda going around the furnace. That's the furnace there. The den. If you're just joining us, we are looking at the Jeanette furnace that was part of a Youngstown, Ohio steel factory. Youngstown Sheet and Tube, I think it was called. Baby got his meds today, Pinky Blue. Thank you for asking. How many employees? I think thousands, I want to say. It was pretty much, like how automobile plants used to be in Michigan. I think it was like that for the town of Youngstown, like just the main employer of the area. Hey, Diane. Okay, So I think that's kind of enough. Right, you get the picture, right? Dilapidated, just abandoned, basically. And this person is just walking around. And this was such a big thing, you know, for 77 years this plant was in operation. So there were websites and like whole things that are just like devoted to the stories of the people who worked there and all kinds of things. It was just a huge industry in the US. And there still are some plants in Youngstown. I'm not sure why this particular one shut down and left, but the employees were like unaware. It just was announced. So, you're ready for owls and lingerie? That's not today. Ew. I mean, I do have one owl in lingerie, but it's a Missy Moo lingerie. So, okay. So you get the picture, I think, right? Okay. All right. Owls and lingerie. What do you think this is? What do you think this is over here? And this is just some more. Look at this. The Rust Jungle. This is a whole website, therustjungle.com. Photographic preservation. Images by Paul Grilly. Like, took a drone. Look at this. They're like, these places are huge, huge. I mean, so they're right on train tracks. So the trains bring in coal, okay? Hey, I'm going to sound like a real city girl talking like this about this stuff because I really, like, I try to learn as much as I can, but I do have intellectual limits, okay? Jenny, welcome back to Owlette. Welcome back, Jenny. So trains would bring in cars of coal, okay? Hey, Suburban Hillbilly. And Ginger. Okay. And the coal would all get processed in and turned into another substance called coke. C-O-K-E. They're not piles of cocaine. It's actually called coke. So coal gets processed in like a whole separate plant, gets transformed into coke, and then that goes to a steel factory and gets dumped there, and they use the coke as a part of making the steel, is my understanding. If anyone knows like better, please let me know. Okay. I mean, see how big these things are? Okay. And this is all I thought I had something else here. Okay. Oh, yeah. So this is the rustjungle.com if you're interested in this kind of thing. Photographs. Okay. All right. So let's get to the meat of it, okay? Let me know. I would like to do a poll with you guys. Have you ever had a supernatural experience in your life? I'm going to do a poll, okay? Have you ever had a supernatural experience? However you interpret that to be, okay? People might have different, thoughts about that. Okay. Like the D on my keyboard doesn't work. So I have to keep copying and pasting a D. I've never had such a hard time getting a D. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Capital D. So have you ever had a supernatural experience? It's just yes or no. Okay. Seriously, it's like a daily struggle for this D. Never had to work so hard for a D. Okay. That's my joke. All right. Here we go.
Things that we had been taught are myths. Things that are just only made for movies or comic books or magazines, Fangoria, or this thing stood up on two legs. His officers had gotten calls about these things. He had two officers that had seen it and that he knows all about it. And he gave him the implication that it at least had killed one of those two people. I am sweating, I'm sorry. Grabbed him, I said, listen to me. I said, you are gonna come with us and we're gonna leave you here to die.
Dude, your story's woo.
It's
affecting me, man. I'm all choked up.
This interview is easily the most frightening one that I've ever done. And this interview is with a man named Matt Emsch, and this is a guy I met at the conference about 6 or so weeks back at the Paranormal Roundtable conference.
Just so you know, all the links are in the description, but I'm going to post them in the chat also. So this channel is What Lurks Beneath. This is the channel that we watched Roy, I forget his last name right now. The last Friday, we watched Roy tell his story, and it was on this channel also. But Matt Emsch also has his own channel, so that's also linked in the description.
Now, I had a chance to actually spend several days with the guy, hang out with him. Just a really great dude. I'm happy to get to call him a friend now. Real down-to-earth, really, really nice, sweet guy. However, the account that he's going to share with us today is completely and utterly terrifying. In fact, it's easily one of the most terrifying I've ever heard. Now, if you guys want to understand something about this interview that I'm about to show you, is the emotions that I experienced during the actual recording were completely genuine. And in fact, this is the only experience that I've ever choked up at several times throughout. Anyway, I'll let Matt take it from here.
So my name is Matt Emsch. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. When I was about 14 years old, me and three of my friends had this experience in the old steel mills down in Youngstown, Ohio. If you go to Google old steel mills of Youngstown, Ohio, you will see, specifically if you bring up the blast furnace and you put blast furnace, old steel mills, Youngstown, Ohio, it'll literally bring up a picture of the blast furnace area where this experience happened. And, you know, I grew up in Youngstown. I live in a suburb of Youngstown now, so still in the area. My friends and I would just basically go everywhere, you know, and anywhere on our bikes or walking. And one of the things that we like to do is we like to frequent the steel mills, because one of my best friends who was there the day of this experience literally lived right across the street from the entrance to these steel mills. So on Route 422 or Youngstown Warren Road in Youngstown, if you look that up, you'll see it's right across from the steel mills. So his house overlooked Youngstown Warren Road or Route 422. You would basically cross the street across from his house, jump over a fence, run across the highway, which was 422, and then we would enter into this area of the old steel mills. And we had to go down a number of different areas to get down there. It took us about a half an hour to get to the blast furnace area, where we basically liked to hang out the most. You know, we checked out the whole area, but we kind of made this one building in the blast furnace area our quote unquote like home base. And this was a 4-floor building that would, if you walked to the inside of it, you could look up and you could see, if you were in the middle of the room, each floor. So
it happened in this building right here. Okay. See the train tracks right there? Okay.
If you were up on, say, the 3rd floor, you could walk into the middle of the room. There would be a half concrete wall, and you could look down to the bottom floors, or you could look up to the 4th floor. And it was just an old, rundown, dilapidated building, and it had open walls on the 1st floor. And this is important to the situation. What it had is on the north, south, east, and west walls, it was open. So we found inside of this place these steel, basically the easiest way I could describe it is if you look at old gladiatorial games where they had the shields that kind of wrapped around the shoulders to protect them. That's how these things were shaped. They had hundreds of them in there. So what we did is we took them and we lined them up next to each other, and we made makeshift walls out of this metal, whatever they were. And we made 2 rows that's as high as we could make it. And we did that, number one, because, it was the time, the late 80s in Youngstown, Ohio was a very dangerous time. We had some monikers for Youngstown that they've gotten over the years that aren't real, something to be proud of. Per capita, it was basically considered the highest murder rate of any city in America at that time, and a lot of gang violence. A lot of mafia things still going on, especially in Youngstown. And, we didn't want to be down there when something was going on and people to see us. We didn't also want the people that worked in the steel mill that still to this day works. There were a lot of different reasons in Youngstown to be careful down there. We would go down there a lot of times armed. We would have guns. We were 14 years old, but we did do it because, you could run into homeless people. You could run into mafiosa that really were down there at that time. You could run into gangs that were doing whatever down there, hiding things or getting rid of bodies, which they found down in those areas over the years. But the thing that really made us most nervous were packs of wild dogs. And, wild dogs in cities that have areas that are not frequented by people anymore, you get, packs, maybe 6 to 10 dogs in them, and they are not your, hey, Fido, come here, let me pet you. They will attack, they will kill. And I believe, in this 2-year period that this happened, when I was 14 and my friends and I went down there and had this experience, there were 2 homeless people that were mauled. Those will come into play as well with this experience. It was unfortunately called Murder Town, USA during this time. Per capita, Youngstown, Ohio during different times has had high rates of murder, and that's not something you want for your city or that, but unfortunately that's how it was when I was growing up and my friends were. So we were just very cautious about what we did. We never shot anything or animals or anything. We just would bring guns down there because we just wanted to protect ourselves, and the guns were pretty sorry anyway. We would have, my one buddy had an old 25 that the pin would pop out of it every time it shot. Another guy had a little 22, and I would gank my dad's 38 out of his closet. He had an old cowboy boot in the back of his closet, and he thought he was being slick. Well, Dad didn't wear cowboy boots. So what's that doing in there? There's just one of them. So there was
So one cowboy boot in Dad's closet. Yeah, look at that be. He doesn't even wear boots, and there's just one of them. That's where he was hiding his guns. So he says later on that this happened in around 1987. But this interview was done a year ago, and he says he's 50. And so I think now he'd be 51. But 87, it was probably a little bit later than that, because he says, I think he was 14 years old when it happened. I was 14 in 1989, and he's a year older than me. So 1980. Yeah, I guess it's only a year off. Okay. All right. Disregard.
There's a 38 in there, and we would take it and just have it there for protection. And the time that this happened was we had just gotten out of 8th grade. It was the summertime, so it was really nice and warm. And you know how it is being a boy, Josh. You get let loose from school and you just go buck wild, and you and your friends just want to have fun. And we would go down there, we would break things, and we would just investigate everywhere. And, if our families knew at that time, because they did find out, if they knew at that time we were going down there, they would not have been happy. It was a very dangerous place. You have an old dilapidated steel mill that was utilized, during the strong period of the United States steel industry. And now this was rusted buildings and rebar hanging out where concrete used to be. And, we would be in this one building I was talking about earlier that we frequented as our home base. And once in a while, a big chunk of concrete would fall from the top of, floor, which 4 floors, that's a hefty drop. So we had to be careful. And, going up the stairs, say from the 1st floor to the 2nd floor, there was an area where maybe 4 stairs were missing, and we kind of had to hop over it, and there was just rebar hanging out, and that'll come into play as well. And this was a big building, like I said, 4 floors. It had giant concrete pillars in each corner of the room, which also will come into play with description of what was going on when it happened. And these things went obviously from underground to the very top of the building, and they were probably, I'd say, 4 to 5 feet wide and as tall as the building was. So we would have giant fires in the center of this room. There was no shortage of materials that we could find to burn. There was always pallets and things like that. And the night that we had the experience, we had a giant fire going, and we were inside. And it's funny, I've heard a lot of experience with cryptids over time, and you hear people kind of in mindsets when things happen. And I recall before we heard what we heard, we were all kind of just staring at the fire, and no one was talking. And, just kind of, how you get when you stare at fires, everybody just kind of stares at it and you kind of drift away. And we heard this pack of wild dogs. So outside, you'd walk out and there was a concrete kind of, just outcropping that the stairs had fallen away. And that was another reason why we liked this building, because nothing could run up these stairs. So we had to hop up and roll in to get into this building. So again, no dogs could get up there, and we liked that. And we heard them, and we just kind of were like, okay, let's go outside and see what's going on. We're standing out on this outcropping and we're watching, and a pack of 6 or 7 dogs run by, and they paid no attention to us at all. And right across from this building was a railroad track. And if you, again, Google blast furnace old steel mills, Youngstown, Ohio, you'll see the picture of exactly what I'm talking about. The railroad tracks right in front of the buildings. And then just beyond them, there would be giant piles of coke, which is basically an ingredient in the steel making process. It's just something that they utilize to make it. And they had huge piles of these things. I don't even know how high. I would say at least 15, 20 feet high.
So this is the coke that I was talking about. So it's coal, and it gets highly processed. Basically, they blast the heck out of it with fire. It's quite a... I watched a video on it because I'm like, what do you mean coke? Is it really coke? That is what it is. So they have all of these train carts full of coal. It gets pushed into this unbelievably hot furnace. It gets pulled out with, and it's like red hot, all of it. And then it gets transported over to this cooling area. I think it's all water. And then eventually through the processing, it looks like what's on the screen. So it's like, you see how it's like, it looks almost like rocks. Okay, so you want to keep this in mind, what this looks like, how high it is. These towers over here are really tall, and you can barely even see the towers behind the piles of coke. And this will be brought over to steel processing plants or steel manufacturing and put in their yard or in some kind of container, for them to make steel. So there will always be a lot of this at steel yards.
Mile each way. So as far as the eye could see, it was just piles of this material. And
let me just replay that because that's important.
Process. It's something that they utilized to make it. And they had huge piles of these things. I don't even know how high. I would say at least 15, 20 feet high, mile each way. So as far as the eye could see, it was just piles of this material. And these dogs ran right in front of our building and made a quick left. They ran across the railroad tracks. They went up the one side of the pile of coke and then down the other side. And immediately we start hearing fighting. We assumed that the dogs were fighting with each other. We had no idea what was going on because they were on the other side. It was dark. We couldn't see. All we could hear is dogs attacking. After maybe 2 or 3 seconds, we started to realize, no, they're not fighting with each other. They're fighting with something else, because what came over the top of these dogs biting and barking was a very loud and deep growl, roar that basically let out, which every one of us, our eyes open, we're like, oh my God, there's something over there. They're attacking something else. And within a few seconds, we start hearing yelping. These dogs are.
Okay. Now, that I just want to say, that dogs are better than people most times. And Matt Emsch is also a major dog lover. He loves dogs. Okay. So I would never bring anything to you guys that is going to traumatize you. Ever, ever. I've listened to this story like 4 times. At first, it's like, oh no, but it's okay. Okay. Like, we've seen dogs that have been injured, a dog is injured in this, but you're not going to see it. And he just describes it. Then the reason he describes it is to kind of show you, just to tell you like how messed up this whole thing was. Okay. But it's not traumatizing, okay? But just a little bit of a warning, if you do feel extra sensitive today, okay, maybe come back in like probably 3 minutes. He's going to say it in just a minute.
Are yelping in pain. And then what happened next was when all of the craziness started. And what happened was 2 dogs, one after another, come literally flying over the top of this pile of material. They were thrown, like somebody had grabbed them and thrown them with great force. The first one, I'll always remember, it was upside down and its butt and tail were facing us. So it definitely didn't jump. It was thrown and it hit the ground and rolled, and it got up and limped away. Another one came and it hit the top of this, and material went everywhere, and it hit the ground. And I'll always remember this because, I'm a dog lover, I'm an animal lover. It had a huge gash from its shoulder all the way to its midsection. It looked like something had flayed open the dog. And it was still alive. It was bleeding all over. It got up and it ran away. And, I always remember, I was like, oh my God, I hope that dog lives. I don't think it did. It was very, very brutal the way that it looked. And then a couple more come thrown over it. And then the rest of the pack came running. And they all went back the way they came, which was to our left, in the way that we would come into this area. And we're watching them run away. There's blood on the ground. We're hearing them yelp as they run away. And as we're watching in just complete disbelief, one of my friends, I remember him like touching me on my back. He was to my left and behind me. And he goes, guys, what is that? What is that over there? And we all simultaneously looked to our right. And what ended up crawling up to the top of the pile of this material was quite honestly, something that, and I say this all the time and I'll always say it, it was so big that it looked fake. It was the biggest animal I have ever seen to date. My friends agreed. There were 4 of us again. So we were all able to talk about this for years after this experience. 2 of them are gone, unfortunately. They passed away. 1 is left. And, we always talk about this with each other, or we did. And my buddy that's still here, we still to this day talk about it. And it was basically just a gigantic wolf-looking creature that was on all 4s. We started comparing over time what we could say the size of this thing looked like. And the easiest thing that we found once we started looking at pictures of things, and because, this was in the late 80s, we didn't have the internet and all that. So we're looking at magazines and books, and the shape and the size of this thing was the closest to a polar bear, but it was as big as any polar bear or bigger. And it had
a polar bear. A polar bear. They're just outside of this steel mill, They're just in there messing around, teenage boys, and there's a polar bear sized animal throwing dogs over these piles of coke.
Telltale shape of a polar bear, where if you have say like a Kodiak grizzly bear, it's like a walking boulder, just giant and massive and just boom, boom. This was very sleek, long-limbed, very lengthy, more muscular instead of just big and bulky and long. And it crawled to the top of this pile, and it was watching where the dogs had gone, and it hadn't paid any attention to us. It hadn't noticed us at that point. And what it did next, I've always said this, some people might find this amusing. It was not amusing at all, because of what happened. So this dog was watching them. It was looking in the direction they left, and it lifted its leg and it did its business. And immediately we knew it was a male because of what it did. And what was scary about it was the force at which, when it started urinating, at which it hit this pile of this material it was standing on, pieces just started going up in the air. You could hear the stream. It was like a hose had just been turned on. And I stepped back. I was like, whoa, that's not normal. It's just so massive, and it was so strong of the stream that this thing let go. I started feeling real fear because, any second it's going to notice us. And just as I'm thinking about that, my buddy who had been to the back and noticed it first started to stumble backwards and fell into that metal makeshift wall that I had been describing to you. And what happened. It made that telltale sign of metal on concrete.
So picture those big piles of coke, right? Looks like those gray rocks. So this thing is lifts its leg to urinate, basically marking its territory from the pack of dogs. And the stream of urine is so powerful and strong that the coke is like ping, ping, ping. Like as if you were to pour like a big thing of water and it would, cause the rocks to go up in the air. That's how strong the urine stream was from this being, this entity, whatever. Pretty crazy.
And immediately this thing snaps its head and it looks at us, and we all froze, because immediately the first thing that jumped out to all of us was not eye shine. It was as bright as there was a power source coming from inside of this creature. There was a yellow, amber, kind of orange, bright light that was coming from its eyes. And that's where we all were drawn. That's where I was drawn immediately. And it was so big that you could see the anatomy of the eyes. So you could see the pupil. You could see, each distinct circular shape of the eye, if you look, if we're just being general about the shape of the eye, you have multiple circles in your eye. You could see each one of them we are probably about 20, 25 feet from this animal. So close, but far enough to where we realized the size of it was just so abnormal and so scary that, we were just froze. And it started looking at each one of us. And you could tell which one of us it looked at, because its eyes, again, were just so big and they were just lit up like Christmas trees. And it looked at each one of us. Each one of us, it looked down the line. There were 4 of us. And when it looked at me, it felt like it was going through me. And what happened next was this thing did something so alien and so insane that it finally took us to things that we had been taught are myths. Things that are just only made for movies or comic books or magazines, Fangoria, or this thing stood up on 2 legs. And it was already so massive. Again, it looked fake. It was just like, this can't be real. I'm sleeping. I'm going to wake up anytime. I have to wake up. But we were awake, and it stood up, and it was twice as big as it was. And it was just so crazy. And we had entered into now everything we've been taught about creatures and werewolves and anything like that are fake. Now we're looking at a real one in front of us. And again, the thoughts going through my head, and I asked my friends later, like, did you guys feel like, we were sleeping, like you were dreaming? And they said similar things, like, yeah, like I felt like I was going to wake up at any moment, but then we just didn't. And I kept having this sense of, okay, this is a dream, this can't be real. And it stood up, and it was twice as big as it was, height wise. It had the dog-shaped legs. I remember immediately the thing that stood out to me immediately was, it had a man's shape to it, but you always hear people say, oh, well, it was man-shaped. Well, you can't compare what we saw to a man. There's no man that was built like this. Its arms were so long, that's the first thing I noticed, that they went past its knees almost to its ankles. It had hands that looked very similar, and I got a good look at them a little bit later, and I'll touch on it, but it had hands that looked like a raccoon, like the hands of a raccoon, just giant, huge hands, and massive, just build, muscles everywhere. It did not have long, scraggly hair. I would say the hair was probably 1 inch long at most. It was actually very, almost like it was groomed. It was very tight. You could see every muscle. It was.
Do you remember Roy from last Friday said that it looked like it was groomed? He said the same thing. Like, it's short hair, but it looked like it had just been groomed. He said the same thing.
As black as any black I've ever seen. It was almost like so black that it was darker than the night blackness behind it. It just stood out. It was so dark. And all you could see are these eyes shining. And it had, huge lats, huge biceps. I remember specifically when I noticed the legs, the quads on it, you could see, any bodybuilder's quads, you see the separation of the muscles and everything. You could see that. You could see, but it was so much bigger than any human being you have ever seen. And then what it did was it growled, but it was almost like a growl and a roar at the same time. And the way it came out is, I've seen things over the years. We've heard about infrasound, about how tigers and lions, and they will use infrasound to stun prey. It can actually jiggle the insides and the organs. And
so I looked into this infrasound thing because I hadn't really heard of it before. Apparently, it's like whales, like whale sounds. Like, they make infrasounds. It's at a totally different frequency that you can't hear, but it can have an effect on you physically. So like he's saying, jiggle the inside in your organs. Like there's one of them that like can make your eyeballs move even. Like it's a real thing. Hey, Jen Shaheder.
That's what I felt, and that's what my buddies felt. I've seen recordings of actually crocodiles and alligators when they do their kind of growl in the water and water bounces off of. It was similar to that, but animal-like, like wolf-like, tiger-like, something of a combination of that. And it went through us all. I remember when it hit me, I felt it go through my chest. And the first thing I felt is I felt like I was going to go down on my knees, my legs from the hips all the way down to my ankles, my calves, everything felt so weak that you know, when you have dreams, when you're being chased by something and you can't run, that's what it felt like. But I couldn't move. I thought I was going to go down on both my knees. I was kind of bent over, but I was still looking at it. My other friend that was to my immediate right later told me that was what he felt similarly. Two of our other friends actually were completely bent over. One was dry heaving, said he felt like he was going to pass out. The other said he felt like he was going to throw up. Something's wrong. What's going on? And it takes a couple steps towards us. And I think the steps of it, you know, moving towards us and how far it moved after it took two steps towards us snapped everybody back into reality. And I remember my buddy right over my left shoulder who had noticed it first, he turned and ran into the building, and we followed suit, not quickly, as fast as we could. And we just headed up the stairs. We ran to the third floor. I don't know why we went to the third floor. We just did. There was really no way out of there, and I need to explain that too. So going up to the fourth floor, you would be stuck on the fourth floor. You could go out to the roof area. There was a short set of stairs that would take you to the roof. On the outside from the third floor was the fire escape. The fire escape only went from the third floor up to the roof because the second floor on down had broken away and fallen down and was laying in a heap on the ground. All of the stairs were all twisted up in metal and everything. And so we really had nowhere to go. We were standing on the third floor, and my one friend who had noticed it first was going basically postal. He starts losing it. He starts crying and screaming. And
so if you're not American, or if you're maybe like, you know, of a different age, I don't feel like he's using postal in the right context here, but basically we used to say people going postal like they were just losing their minds, okay? But the reference is that one of the first mass shootings ever was in a post office, and it was a postal employee, and he went to work and opened fire, basically. So he had some grievance against, you know, where he was working, the post office. So people kind of coined it like going postal. So he's my age, he's saying that, but, you know, he doesn't mean that his friend is shooting anything up, just that he's losing it, basically. He's going for crashing out. He's crashing out.
I remember, you know, I'll always remember this. You know, I was always a big kid, and I grabbed him out of fear, and I'm starting to sweat right now because I'm thinking about this. You know, it always brings me back. I grabbed him, and I put my hand around his mouth, and I grabbed him so hard that I lifted him up the floor. His feet were hanging, and he still, you know, muffled screams, and we all are screaming at him. You got to shut up. It's going to come in here. It's going to hear you. You have to be quiet. You know, I was using choice words, of course. Finally, he started, you know, gasping for air, and I put him down, and, you know, I looked at him, and we'll let you go. Are you going to be quiet? He let him go, and just as we let him go, he takes a deep breath. You hear a thump, the building vibrates, and then you hear the telltale sign of basically nails on concrete. And we all knew what that meant. I knew immediately it was coming in the building. So we're standing, this half wall is in front of us. We're looking down, and all of a sudden, you know, we have this huge fire. It starts to come in, and you got that kind of train effect of, when is a train going to end? That's a long train. Well, this thing's coming in, and it goes past this makeshift wall that we had created. And the first thing we noticed first was the shadow that hit the wall. Now, anybody walking by a fire, even if you're small, you're going to get a big shadow that gets thrown. So imagine something so big that it looks fake. And that's what we're looking at, its shadow. So the shadow just overtook the entire wall. There really was no shape or form on the wall. It was just black. And then we see the head come in, then the shoulders and the rest of it, and the tail. And as it's walking in, you could see, that like when tigers or big cats walk, you get the scapulas that pop up, in the back. And you're seeing the bones lifting, but they were surrounded by so much muscle that you could see it rippling as it walked. And it's looking around and it's sniffing the air.
Doesn't that sound absolutely terrifying? Terrifying. You've seen this before. Got a grip on my pizza chip. Definitely watch if you like this story. If you find it like compelling, definitely watch Last Week, Roy. It's way longer, but it's like you're on the edge of your seat the entire time. It's
obviously looking for us, and we're all trying to be as quiet as we can, just frozen in place. And when it got near the fire, you could start to see that it had saliva just pouring out of its mouth. I'm not talking just dripping. I'm talking like the sound of like when you're in an empty building or something and it's raining and you're hearing big drops hitting. The saliva's hitting the concrete as it's walking. And that's a sign that, said to me immediately, it's either going to feed or kill. And that's why it's salivating. And it bares its teeth every once in a while, and you get the glint of this white, and you see the teeth even when its mouth was closed, the top canines were hanging out, and you would get little glints of the bottom ones here that would show. So its teeth definitely hung out of its mouth, even when it wasn't baring the teeth. And it walked by the fire, and you could see immediately jet black, except for, I thought that it was maybe a reflection of the fire, but we all agreed later that it had a very light white stripe that went from the back of its neck all the way down to the tail. And that was the only other color that this thing showed other than the eyes. You always hear stories about people that see dogmen in the woods during the day, and they talk about the different colored eyes and, blue to black to brown. I don't know what this thing's true eye color was. All we could see was this orange amber color, just literally causing things to light up wherever it looked. So it wasn't eye shine. It was something internal coming out of this thing. And then another thing that really has brought me into believing that these are more than a natural creature, and that there is something supernatural going on, is when it walked by the fire and its front hands, paws, whatever you want to call them, had touched the ground near the fire. Something happened where it only happened with its front left hand, or whatever you want to call it. It basically blinked out. It cloaked for a second, and you could see they see things through it, almost like that predator effect. And when it put its hand down by the fire, something really strange happened aside from the cloak effect. If you've ever seen video of the sun and the magnetic anomalies and storms that they have on the surface of the sun, where you see,
you know what he's talking about? Let me let him.
The tubes come out of it and the different shapes, and
when you see footage of like the sun really close up, and it's like, it doesn't look anything like it does from the distance that we're at. Like, it's like fire coming out from this side and like explosions over here. You ever see the sun really close up like that? That's what he's referring to, what he's talking like.
Magnetic storms. Basically, that happened right around its cloaked out paw, and it only happened for about 2-3 seconds, enough that I noticed it and my other buddy noticed it. The other two did not. They were at a different angle, and it had basically just looked around the room. It bared its teeth after it sniffed, and it snapped its head and looked right up at us. It knew exactly where we were. It finally caught our scent, and it looked at us, and it looked up at us, and it bared its teeth, and it growled again, and you felt a vibration. But I truly believe that this half concrete wall that we had in front of us had, if it threw that infrasound at us again, I think that half concrete wall blocked it, because we didn't get sick or felt funny or anything. We felt a little vibration. You felt it. Like, I remember I had I think it was my right hand on the top of the wall at that time, and I felt a little vibration in it, but didn't get sick or anything. So I truly believe that wall blocked whatever, because of the angle of it being down on the first floor, us being on the third, and it threw it at us. I truly think it did. And then it stood up again, and it was almost like, like a comic book pose. It threw its arms out to its sides, and its muscles all clenched, and it looked at us, and it growled, and it looked out to the left, it looked to the right, and it saw the stairs on the wall, and it looked back at us, and I got a sinking feeling in my stomach, because I knew what it was going to do. It dropped back down on all four, and it ran for the stairs. And, like I had told you, it was missing 4 stairs, so we had to kind of hop over and climb the wall to get up, and it jumped over that like it wasn't even there. And it was heading up, very fluid. Its tail, I remember when it ran, you could tell it utilized it kind of like a rudder. So it was kind of moving. When it moved, its tail kind of bent certain ways. Its tail reminded me of a mountain lion or a cougar. Very non-hairy, short hair, very thick. I remember the bones in its legs and its arms being just gigantically thick. And again, that sense of, not only are we looking at something that's not supposed to exist, the size, again, is just so massive, it has to be fake. And again, this is really happening. And when it had stood up, I forgot to mention this, it had stood up near one of those concrete pillars that I had mentioned the building had in all 4 corners. And we had gone back years later. We never went back for years. And we got an idea of how big these pillars were, which gave us an idea of the size estimation of this animal. And when it stood up, it basically width-wise blocked out the pillar. So it was as wide as the pillar, 4 to 5 feet across. And height-wise, the ceilings were probably where, at the sides where there was floor above. It was probably 15 to 18 feet high. I would guesstimate, and my friends guesstimated, it was somewhere between 10 to 12 feet tall. So it stood up. Its ears probably were at least 12 feet at the tip. And
12-foot tall polar bear, but like a dog. Really, Abriana? I don't even know much about these skinwalker things. We should look into that.
And again, I've heard people describe sizes of Sasquatch and other cryptids of massive size. And, people will, well, you were kids. Well, we went back as adults. And I'm telling you, we remembered where it stood and it had to be minimum 10 feet. I truly think, again, tips of the ears, 11, 12 feet tall. Now it's heading up the stairs towards us. 2 of my friends are going absolutely ape crap crazy, running. One is running in circles. The one that I had to grab his mouth, he's screaming bloody murder in circles, just running in circles, going nowhere. And he finally jets for the stairs to take him up to the 4th floor. My other friend runs for the fire escape. Again, you can't go down. So only way is up. And I'm frozen, petrified. My other friend's standing next to me. He just said, I was standing next to you. I didn't know what to do. and it made its way from the first to the second floor in seconds. And then it started to head up from the second floor to the third. And where I was standing, if anybody would have, this thing or anyone would have walked up to the top of the stairs, the first thing it would have met would have been me. And it would have came within 2 feet of me once it got to the top of the stairs. It got to the middle of the stairs, and I started having true belief that this is the day that I'm going to die.
Listen to this. I don't know if you guys have experienced what he's about to say. I have not.
I started to think about my family. I thought about my dog, who I loved very much. I thought about, I was getting ready to go into high school to play football at the school, Ursuline High School, a Catholic school, is very big in the sports and athletics as well as academics. And my dad had played there. My whole family had gone there. And I was very proud that I was going to be playing football there. And I thought, I'm not going to get to play. All this is going through my head. It's all gone. And we're going to watch each one of us truly be mauled and killed by this creature, and this is the end. I really believe this was the day I was going to die. And it was probably within 6 to 7 feet from me when I looked at it, and it was looking right at me or at my friend. I think it was looking at me because he was behind me, and I would have been, like, again, the first one it got to. And right at that moment, I will always believe this to the day I die, and the sweat's starting again. I believe there was divine intervention. I truly believe it. I'm Catholic. I'm not a great Catholic. I don't go to church a lot. I don't practice as much as I should. But I think that there was divine intervention, because once it hit that 6, 7 feet mark from me, where if it would have jumped, it would have been on me. We heard that a train. And whenever a train would come by, we would always get nervous, because if they'd see, us in there or the light from a fire, we'd be in big trouble. They would call the police or whoever, and we'd be in trouble. And we had never, ever had a train go by where they laid on the horn. And it came by, and as soon as it went by the building, be it from the angle the guy that was driving it saw the inside, what was going on, or he just saw the fire, which I seem to think he noticed how bright of a fire we had going in there. He laid on this horn, and this thing stopped right 6 to 7 feet from me, and it looked at me, and it looked back at the opening where you could see the train going by, and we're all screaming bloody murder. Somebody help us, please save us. My other 2 friends are gone. They had, one went up to the roof, the other ran up the stairs. I don't know where he was. My friend and I were screaming, someone help us. And it looked back at us, and it looked back again, and it turned around and started running down. And it took literally, I would say, 1 to 1.5 seconds to get from where it stood 6 to 7 feet from me at the 3/4 mark of that second to third floor step area to the steps of the going from the second to the first. And then something else supernatural happened, where you stopped seeing movement of joints and the tail, and it just was a black streak that left the building. And it wasn't just from how fast it was. It had basically gone from physical creature to almost shadow. And it just was just a black mass had just left the building, and it was gone. And I'll always remember that. And as through the years, the things I've been learning, hearing about shadow people and people, very similar things that I saw and we saw when it did that. And we're screaming, and the train just is, ka-clonk, ka-clonk, ka-clonk. And it starts, we're thinking it's slowing down, but it wasn't. And it starts getting farther and farther away. And then the hope of we're going to be saved is slowly leaving us. And then it's gone. And then the fear sets back in that this thing's going to turn around and it's going to come back in and it's going to kill us. And by that time, my other two friends had come back down because they heard the train and they heard us screaming help. And I think that they thought that, everything was going to be all right, and people were coming for us, and they almost, my one buddy almost had kind of almost a half smile on his face. And when we all looked at each other, everybody was pale white and just so weak from the experience already that I wanted to curl up in a ball and just lay there. And the fear set back in. It's going to come back in. And an hour goes by and we're still up there, and it didn't. And then we start talking to each other, it's after 10 o'clock. We have to get out of here because this thing's going to eventually come back. And my friend that had lost it and that we had to shut up is totally postal, crying, screaming, I just want to go home. I want my mom and dad. Please, God, help us. And we're trying to calm him down, and he won't. And we're like, listen, we have to go. He's like, no, we can't go out there. It's going to be waiting for us. It's going to be there. And we all thought that. But then again, the fear of, as each minute clicks by, we're giving this thing the opportunity, if it did run away, to come back and see if we're still there, or it knows we're still there. It's outside just watching. And we kept looking at the space between this makeshift wall and the opening of the building where there was concrete, looking for those orange eyes shining out there, and we couldn't see them. And it was hard to see, but if it was looking at us, it was so bright, we would have saw it. And so we finally decided, okay, we have to at least go down to the second floor. And my friend is just going crazy, and we're dragging him with us. We pull him down the second floor, and we're probably up there for maybe half an hour. And then we go down to the first, and we said, we have to make a run for it. We have to go. We have to go now. It's almost 11 o'clock at night. We're in an old steel mill in downtown Youngstown. I mean, this is not where you want to be, even if there's not a mythological creature trying to hunt you down and kill you. So we're like, we have to get out of here. And we just remembered then, I remember thinking, oh my God, we have weapons. But I'm telling you, Josh, there is no way on God's green earth that if, even with me having a 38 on me, that it would have done nothing but anger this thing. I thank God we didn't ever pull them out or shoot at it or anything. I don't think we could have even hit it. Number one, we were so horrified. Number two, it would have done nothing. It would have just pissed it off, and it would have mauled us even worse. So we start to leave. We have to go. I am sweating. I'm sorry. Surprised I haven't cried yet. I usually break a little bit.
Oh, dude, your story's woo.
It's
affecting me, man. I'm all choked up. Go ahead. Go. Keep going.
Finally, we start to leave, and my friend is screaming bloody murder. Please don't let us go out there. It's going to kill us. Finally, I grabbed him, and I'm sorry I have to use my language. I grabbed him. I said, listen to me. I said, you are going to come with us, or we're going to leave you here to die. You are going to come with us, or it's going to come in here and it will kill you, and you will be here alone. We will leave you here. You either come with us now, or you will stay. And he's screaming, don't leave me, don't leave me. So finally, we turned around.
Do you guys remember, what was his name? Herman. Do you remember Herman on the train tracks in New Orleans was saying, don't leave me, don't leave me? There are some real similarities.
Me and my friend, we took his hand, and he grabbed both of our shirts, and he's strangling us, pulling on our shirts, and we had to literally pull him out of the building to get out there. We get out to the concrete outcropping, and the fear sets in also, because what I had forgotten to mention was when you climb up, you could look underneath, and it would go way back into the building. So it was very, very reasonable to think that this thing was underneath, waiting for us to drop, and then it would be over, and no one would hear us. It could maul each of us, take its time. No one would have ever heard us. And even if they heard screams in the downtown area or up by the highway, no one would know where they were coming from. So we jump down and we start taking off, and we're going as fast as we can. My buddy's choking us to death. Finally, we get him to the point where he's running on his own, and we're all running together, almost arm in arm together in a straight line. And it takes a half an hour to get to my friend's house from that blast furnace. So that's a half an hour of complete and utter terrorizing fear that we were in, with every noise, every pebble one of us kicked, every time the wind would pick up and leaves would blow, we would think it was there, it was behind us, it was chasing us. We'd turn around and stop and look around. We finally got to the last portion of where we could get out of this area. And what it was a hill, literal hill of gravel and just material that going down was easy. You could turn your feet to the side, standing up, and just walk yourself down slowly. Going up, you had to go up on all fours. And we would always laugh at each other. We would always, make fun of whoever was the first that would start sliding down, because we would always lose our foot. It would always go out from under us, and it would take us longer, and it was exhausting to get up, having this gravel coming out from under your hands and feet. So now we're crawling up this pile of gravel, this huge mountain of gravel, and each one of us at different times, because we're trying to go as fast as we can, start to slide down, and the fear sets in that it's behind us, it's going to get us. And numerous times, each one of us screamed, "Is it behind me? Is it behind me?" And you turn around and you look, and it wouldn't be there. You'd expect to see it. We finally got up there. Me and my one buddy made it first, and we helped our other friends. We pulled them up, and we ran across the highway, and we went over the fence and across the street and to my buddy's house that lived across, and his parents weren't home. And I remember, this just always sticks out to me. He had a hose, and I remember turning the hose on, and I just drank and drank and drank until my stomach felt like it was going to pop. And I just poured it all over my head, and each one of us did the same thing. And when we just sat on the porch and on the stairs, my other buddy was in the front yard, and each one of us in a complete and utter daze, not talking for at least an hour at least, staring across out towards where we had come from. We couldn't see the area, obviously, it was so far, but we're just staring just in shock, in disbelief. My one friend who had lost it, he didn't talk for 2 weeks. He had to go start seeing a psychiatrist. I had major problems. I started to go, I'm half Lebanese. We belong to St. Marin's Church. If you're from the Youngstown area, you know it. It's a church there that Lebanese go to. And I went there and I talked to the priest there, and I told him about what happened, and I expected, the priest did not believe me or say anything, and he believed me immediately. And he had told me, "Matthew," he said, "you need to understand something. First and foremost," he said, "God saved your lives." He said, "I believe there was divine intervention." And he said, "Secondly, you need to understand that there are things in this world that most people have no clue about, any idea." And he mentioned exorcisms specifically. And he said, there are demons in this world. In the church, it is well known, you go all the way to Italy and Rome, and they teach, they have their top-notch exorcists that go all over the world for the most horrible demon exorcisms. And he mentioned maybe it was a demon or something, but he had given the impression and that he knew what it was, and he was not surprised at all that we saw something like this. And, the priest had said, sometimes these things bleed into our world, and they take some of us. And some of us are lucky enough to get away, or they just don't bother us. And he said, but there are a long-standing history of things that aren't supposed to existing in this world. And he said, I believe you. And
I feel very lucky that these things have left me alone so far.
I cried. I broke down, and it wasn't, why would a child go to a priest and make up a story like that? And, we had talked about, obviously, the situation of us having to address this with our families. And we all agreed, there's 4 of us, we would always be with each other when we spoke to our parents together so that we could be there to back each other up. Well, 2 of my buddies' parents had you guys are full of crap. They didn't want to hear it. Just get out of here. Go do what you're going to do. My parents, my mom walked out of the room. You're crazy. She didn't want to hear it. My dad, however, knew me and looked at me and said, well, maybe you guys saw a bear. Maybe it was a bear with mange, or maybe it was, some mutated creature, normal animal, a bear. He kept saying bear because we kept telling him how big it was and what would you compare it to. And we talked about a polar bear. It was as big as a polar bear, but it didn't look like a polar bear. It looked like a wolf, looked like a man-shaped wolf, but it was giant. And he just kept saying, well, you guys saw something, they're 14-year-old kids. They saw, something natural. They just don't know what it is. Then my best friend's dad, who I'm not going to out him, he's passed away. So I'm not going to out him and his family because I'm very close to them. But all I'm going to say is, and any of my friends that see this, they know who I'm talking about and what his dad did. He basically was in charge of the city. He was in charge of the police and many other parts of it. And we told him, his mom did the same thing mine did. She just said, you guys are crazy. You saw a big dog or whatever. And she left the room and she didn't want to hear it. And his dad, however, got very upset. And he gave us the impression that he knew what we were talking about. And he first and foremost went off on us and said, choice words, what the hell are you guys doing down there? You could get killed down there. The place is falling apart. He said people put bodies down there. There was a couple homeless people that were mauled by packs of dogs down, and he brought that up, which makes me wonder, was it really a pack of dogs that mauled these 2 homeless men? Was it? I don't know. I don't know. After seeing what I saw and we saw, I can't.
Think about that. A pack of feral dogs. I mean, I have a pack of feral dogs right here, but, I bottle fed them. But they're the same lineage. They haven't ever been domesticated. I've seen so many feral dogs on the streets. They stay away from people. They don't go at people. The only reason they would ever interact with you is if you were harassing one of them or taunting one of them. But to maul him to death, like feral dogs? Mm-hmm.
I guarantee it. But he didn't want to talk about it anymore. He warned us, if you ever go back down there, he said, I promise you, I will put you in JJC. He said, you will not play football at Ursuline, Matt. He looked at me right. He said, you think that you'll play? He says, your coach will never allow you to play. He'll think you're crazy. He said, you guys will go, you'll go to the city school, which is Ryan High School. He said, you won't go to Ursuline. You won't go to that school. You'll go to the city school, and you guys will be made fun of the rest of your lives, and you'll be the joke of Youngstown. And he called my father, and I'm going to say something here. My older sister, I told her about this recently. My parents are gone, and I've never really told anybody in my family about this other than my dad because of what happened when my dad was called to my friend's house. And my sister and I got into it. This was just recently. And she looked at me and she said, what are you talking about? She goes, what do you mean? She goes, how did we never hear about this? She says, why didn't mom or dad tell us about this? What are you talking? She was denying that I'm telling the truth. I'm looking at her, I'm a 50-year-old man. You think I'm going to lie to you? You're my sister. What are you, Chris? So we got into it. And I'm being honest about this. And if she hears it, she can admit it. We got into it. And I was very upset about this. But the reason I didn't talk about it, especially, and I'm sure my younger brother, who's only a year younger than me, is not going to be happy about this when he finds out, because we were best friends growing up. We were inseparable. But when my best friend's dad called my father to come, he sat us down and he talked to my dad. My dad's name was Ken. And he said, Ken, he said, you know the situation here. He said, if these boys go around talking about it, number one, all their classmates are going to go down there. Somebody's going to get killed just from getting hurt from the buildings and everything. He said, secondly, he said, your son is going to be the joke of his school. He won't play ball. And he looked at me and he had this look of, oh man. And he said, you have to promise me that you make your son not talk about this. He doesn't tell his siblings about this. You don't talk to your wife about this. And he pulled my dad aside and they went in the kitchen and they talked. And when I went home, my dad kept looking at me my dad and I were super ultra close. We called each other best buddy. We were close. All of the kids, 5 kids in my family, we all had special relationships with my parents, but me and my dad had the closest. And he kept looking at me with this just fear in his face that I kept telling him, I'm crying hysterically, Dad, you have to believe me. This is what we saw. And he kept looking at me like, Jesus, I think he's telling the truth. And after what my friend's dad said to him is when he really got scared. And he said, you can't tell your sisters and brothers about this. Don't talk about it with my younger brother. He kept saying, don't tell him, because we were inseparable. He said, you can't tell him. He said, he's not going to be able to sleep. You're going to cause problems. So he put the fear of God in me, and so did my buddy's dad. A week later, my best friend tells me he finally got his dad to sit down with him and talk. And he said, he knows what it is. He said he told him that his officers had gotten calls about these things. He had 2 officers that had seen it and that he knows all about it. And he gave him the implication that it at least had killed one of those 2 people that had been mauled in the downtown steel mill area, that were homeless people living in that area. He said he basically told me that he knew everything about it. Don't ever go back down there. You guys are lucky to be alive. And we just were like, whoa, finally somebody is giving us credence and believing us. And I felt this sense of, oh my God, we're not crazy. We didn't see a bear. We're not just little kids that don't know what's going on. This is real and this is crazy. So, over the years, I've learned, obviously been just completely just stuck on what happened. I think about it every day. And the older I've gotten, the more I've gotten more involved in the cryptid community. I met Josh Turner and Barton Nunley, and I've talked to other people like Wes Germer and Tony Merkel, and these guys all making the same face that you're making right now, a little pale with your hand over your mouth. And this is not, anybody can believe what they want. And I'm talking to anybody watching this right now. I'm looking at you right now. You can believe whatever you want. You can think that this is entertainment, because in the end of the day, this channel's for entertainment. But let me tell you something. I will go to my grave. I'm giving you pertinent, personal information about myself and where I live and my family and the schools I went to and the area I grew up into. This happened. This was real. I have no reason to make myself look like a crazy person or just somebody looking for attention. This really happened. You can think I'm crazy if you want, but let me tell you something. You look at all of the instances of people are having more and more experiences these days. And because of media, we're hearing more about them and you're getting more information out than ever. There's stuff going on. And I've heard some experiencers out there that it's cringeworthy and it's obvious they're making it up. But I've heard stuff over the years, especially the last couple years. And when I talked to Josh Turner at Paranormal Roundtable, and he told me about his experience and what him and his cousin saw, it was almost exactly what I saw. And I had never met him before. I had never talked to Josh before until I told my experience. And I got the fear of God in me again. And right now I'm nervous. I have anxiety in my chest. I'm sweating. My shirt's starting to show it. I keep wiping sweat from me. I usually crack a tear or two. I'm surprised I haven't. There are things out there that people don't want to believe are real. There are. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just telling you, this is what happened. If there was one person, you can question. There were 4 of us. 4 of us, okay? 4. We all talked about it for years. 2 of my friends are gone. God rest their souls. and they had issues for years, and they started doing other things that ended their lives prematurely, that I believe was because of what happened to us. My other friend refuses to discuss it. He has a very successful business. He thanks me all the time whenever we talk that I have the guts to talk about this. He's afraid to talk about it. He to this day has severe PTSD and doesn't even like to discuss it more than 5 minutes. It really happened. I don't know what else to say. I'm not going to make a fool of myself, in front of thousands of people, because a lot of people are going to see this. And I've done other shows and people have seen it. There's no reason for me to lie. And anybody that knows me personally that will see this, you know who I am. I'm not a liar. I'm not a crazy person. I'm not somebody that makes up fantastical stories. This happened. And it almost ended our lives. And people need to know that these things are real, and they're still out there. People are telling, their experiences, and I hear, similarities. I've heard some recently, some guy mentioned one about the raccoon hands, and that made me stop. And he mentioned a couple other things, and, it was really crazy. And I had something happened to me. This is the first time I've ever going to share this. I've never shared this on any other show. About 3.5 weeks ago, almost a month, I had a dream that was the realest dream I've ever had in my life. Normally in your dream, when you think you're at home, it's not your home. I was at home. I was in my backyard. I heard something. We have woods behind our house. I heard something in the woods. I went to the woods, and, I lost my right leg below the knee last April. I had some complications, health issues from surgeries, and I have a prosthetic. And I remember something attacked me from behind and threw me on the ground. And I saw what it was, and it was what I saw all those years ago. And it ripped off my pant leg, and it threw my prosthetic into the woods. And then it got on top of me, and it crawled over top of me, and it was 100% the thing I saw when I was 14. And it crawled over me, and the eyes were glowing, and it was dripping saliva. It dripped in my mouth. And I've gagged at telling people this story a couple times. I tasted it. I could smell it. It looked at me, and it did what I've heard people mention some cryptids do, which is mind speak, basically talking to you in your head. And it put its head maybe 2 inches from me, and it looked at me, and it started speaking to me in my mind. And it could have been just the ultra realistic dream, but I'm telling you, then it was the realest dream of my life. And it told me in my dream that I've been talking too much about it, that it's been looking for me for a long time, and it was there for me all those years ago. And that it will see me again someday. And then I woke up, and I was sweating. My puppy, her name's Hadley, was at the foot of my chair. I was soaking wet. She was standing there. She's normally never there. It was like 3:30 in the morning. She's always up in bed with my wife. And she's at the foot of my chair, whining with her front paws on my legs, looking at me like, what's wrong? And I'm telling you, maybe it was just an ultra realistic dream, but I'm telling you, it was the realest dream I've ever had in my life. And it was 100% what I saw all those years ago. Now, maybe it's just because I've told the story a few times. And I'm sorry, it's not a story. It's an experience. I have to designate those two, because there are stories out there, and they're just that, stories. This was an experience. And maybe because I had been talking about it recently, I'd met you for the first time at Josh's cryptid conference in Texas, and I met people there that had seen things, and I don't think it was a dream. It was too real. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. That's basically what has gone down. I've had some other things happen. I think I told you, I even sent you an audio clip. I had went to Beaver Creek State Park. If I didn't, I'll send it to you. I had went there for a Bigfoot conference a few months ago, which is in Ohio. The night before the conference, I had met a guy named Johnny Freeman, who's a psychic. You can look him up online. He's on Facebook. He came up to me. I never met the man in my life. He came up to me and told me I needed to go up this sketchy trail. Now, I had just had my left knee replaced. I have a prosthetic on my right leg. He tells me I need to go up this trail. There's supposedly a portal up at the top of this trail. And I looked at him, and first I'm like, he has his hand on my arm. I'm like, bro, slow your roll. I don't know who you are. What are you talking about? I can't just go up some trail. I've got half a leg. I just had my knee replaced. He said, I'm sorry. He says, I've never seen someone with an aura like you before. He says, you need to go up this trail. There's a reason.
Would you go up the trail? Some random walking up to you and like, look, your aura, something else, okay? I think you need to go up this trail. I don't know if I would. I don't think I would.
And I go up this trail. It took me probably 35, 40 minutes. And nothing visual happened. At the end of me being there talking out loud, I made an EVP. I'd never done an EVP before. I've seen all the ghost shows and everything, and I pulled out my phone and I started recording the app. And I basically had asked questions out loud, and this is online. You could go to Cryptid Creatures, which is another cryptid site, where my buddy Todd Erie and Brian Brock interviewed me. They upped the sounds on this recording if you want to hear it. And I'm not trying to plug somebody else there, Josh, sorry.
No, you're good. Don't worry about it, buddy.
It's on there, and you can hear it, and you hear basically a grunt, which everybody I played with, from Ron Moorhead, who is a legend in the Bigfoot community, to Martin Groves, who is a legend and is like a father to me, and I love the man. We've talked and sat down. He has, in my opinion, the most memorable, most insane experience of dogmen and Bigfoot that you've ever heard, if you haven't heard it. We sat down at the conference where I met you, and we became very close, and we looked at each other with fear in our eyes because of the similarities to what we had both seen. And we had never met before. So, you hear on this thing, you hear a grunt, you hear wood knocks. I didn't hear them with my own ears. You can hear them on this recording. Martin Groves will tell you about him and I, and about us meeting and the similarities. And it's not fake. So that's what's happened. I've had some crazy stuff connected with me through the years. I've always had a sensitivity to things. I've noticed details that most people don't over the years. And I freak my family out sometimes doing things. And I don't know, maybe it's just I'm sensitive like some people. And, there's that veil that break our world from the supernatural world. And I think some of us are just capable sometimes to see things that others can. I think that this thing broke through, like my priest told me. It bled through, and we just happened to be there. It did not like that we were there, and I think it tried to remove us. And that's what went down, and that's what I've gone through over the years, and things are still kind of happening on and off, and nothing of that severity, but definitely weird.
Wow. There you go. You took me through a roller coaster, man.
It's been crazy.
So being at that conference, hearing Martin Groves' experience was utterly terrifying. You guys, I'd say, are like right around. I've only ever heard, I guess, when I say a handful, I mean like less than 6. It's that, and you know me. Everyone knows what I do, my channel. I've gone through so many, and there's a lot of stories and accounts that never even made it to the channel that I've never talked to anybody about. Mm-hmm. But there is 3 in particular that are now yours being one of them, as far as one of the most emotionally taxing stories that I've ever endured, because of the it's not just how good you were able to tell it, but the level of fear that I could feed off of.
You got a little pale there for a minute. I'll admit
it was genuine. Yeah.
Did any of you get chills, or did you feel the blood drain out of your face or anything? Every time I watch it, I've watched him like 4 times, and I've watched him tell it like on different channels. He tells it also on his own channel. The reason I didn't play that one is because he puts in a lot of sound effects, which kind of makes it less, it seems like less authentic to me. the adding the sound effects, you know. So that's why I wanted to show this one. But I just get nothing but sincerity from this guy.
It honestly shook me. There's only a few stories that genuinely shook me. Martin's was another. And then there was another gentleman. Unfortunately, it wasn't a video. I didn't get to hear it in person, but you might know what I'm talking about. It's a gentleman who had an experience back in Kentucky. I want to say it was around the 80s too. Similar to yours. He had gone in with a couple of friends it was like an old flooded out hospital. I don't remember where in Kentucky it was. They were down in the basement where the old morgue was. And then this is just off my memory. He goes in one of the pull out panels or something, or he's on something, and he hears something come in and go down the ladder, and he thinks it's his friends. Well, long story short, I can't give you the good version because I don't really remember. It's been a while. Anyway, this thing comes in and it chases him through the bottom part, and it's so much like you described. I mean, you could see the fear as you're reading that, like how he typed and explained. And long story short, he was able to make it out. This thing nearly chased after him. He runs across the street to some lady's house. He's frantic. He doesn't know what's going on. Anyway, and so there's a little. I'll have to send you the story because it's like, oh my gosh. And,
yeah, I've never heard of it.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of like having to process like what I just endured to
I
like
appreciate
begin to
that.
like, okay, let me start to dissect this and like understand like where do I even.
I'm nauseated right now. I'll be honest with you. I'm sick to my stomach. Yeah. It's not easy to tell it.
No. And like you said, this isn't a laughing matter. It's not for anything. Like, this is a genuine
not at
experience.
all.
Someone. Okay, so let me first start by asking. Okay, so you said that what time of night? What time of night would you say this was?
When we started the fire, I would say it was probably somewhere between 9:15, 9:30 at night, 9 p.m., 9:30. When we heard the dogs, I would probably say it was roughly maybe 20 to 10, quarter till, somewhere in that time frame.
Okay, so it's dark. It's pitch
black.
black.
Completely.
Dark.
Yeah, 100% dark.
So this thing climbs up there. How could you maintain composure with something that resembles a werewolf from 20 feet away?
Again, it was
Shock, probably?
It was shock. It was complete fear, and we were frozen. And again, I repetitively say this. It was just that it was so. We were in shock, and it was, again, what I keep going back to was that thought of, this can't be really happening. It's so big, it's fake, that we have to be dreaming. This can't be real.
Disbelief.
And that's something that just kept constantly going through our mind and my mind. And they told me they also thought like they were dreaming. It just, how is this possible? What is this in front of us?
Just waiting to wake up. Oh my God.
And it just was this constant thought that went through my head. It's fake. I'm going to wake up sometime. This is a dream. And then we never woke up. It really went down.
I know you described almost in vivid detail what its physical, the physical aesthetics of it. I'm going to backtrack real quick just for a second and go back to the 3 encounters that I mentioned. Now, the one I forgot, there's a fourth one, is the guy who shot, I'm talking about the guy who shot the Bigfoot through, or the dogman through the truck?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. What do you think?
So this says the case I'm talking about is the Joe Barger story, who's years ago shot one of these creatures in the face with a .45 in his truck and killed it. He was later accosted by government agents for killing a quote unquote asset. I think in that story, I haven't listened to I think I've only heard about it, not heard the person tell it himself, but that they said it was like Homeland Security, this dogman thing.
About that.
And he was in
encounter.
trouble. He was in trouble for killing it.
He told some similarities as well. It didn't sound quite as big as the one, I've heard, and you have too, stories of maybe alpha Bigfoot and things like that. I think this thing was like an alpha because it was just so long and massive and giant, and all the comparisons I've heard have been bigger than human, but not to that size.
Right.
And this thing just seemed abnormally even big from some of the things. I truly believe, from what I've learned and heard about most Sasquatch, the one that thing that we saw, I would put my money on that one. I really would. I don't think there's many things out there that could handle this thing. It was created from whoever, the devil, demons, whoever, as just the alpha predator. This thing was created for one thing, and it was to be a predator.
Have you seen any sort of werewolf depiction that can even closely resemble, other than the Van Helsing werewolf?
Yeah, you just touched on it right there. That's it.
That's what you saw.
The one that Hugh Jackman turned into specifically, because there's two in that movie. The one at the beginning, the one lady's brother turns into one that's kind of whitish gray colored. She asks him not to shoot it at the beginning of the movie. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him.
I don't know if I remember that. It's been a long time, but we all remember
there's one at the beginning.
The weightlifter, I would say.
Bettina, I did Bettina's show, and I told her too that when Hugh Jackman turned into the werewolf, the black one, that's the closest thing that I have seen that can compare. His was a little more human-like. This wasn't as human-like as that was. This was more something out of like a comic book or something. It was just the arms just so insanely long. Its fingers were reaching almost to its ankles. Its arms were just so long. It was just like freaky. That's one of the freakiest things for me, was in the hands, these black kind of just super long, like raccoon hands. It was freaky.
Have you seen? There's a Dogman depiction, and I want to say it's. Have you ever seen the Vic kind of Dogman and his thing?
I've seen some of them. I don't know which one you're referring to.
Let me pull up. It's the one. This guy right here. And so when you're mentioning arm length, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. What I envision.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Very similar. Yeah.
So I would imagine the what do you call the Hugh Jackman Dogman, but arms like that, just like over exaggerated hands and arms that are like
super long.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that's a really good depiction. Yeah.
Were the eyes like that though, where you could see pupils and it was kind of like glowing?
They were. I can't really see it there, but they were just, Josh. They were so bright. Like I'm telling you, when it was walking around the building, even with the fire in there, when it would turn its head towards the wall, you'd see the light from its eyes almost light up a little portion of area on the ground in the low part of the wall where it was. So it had some type of internal something going on there that caused those eyes to shine like that. It was not eye shine. No way.
You mentioned you were in the remnants of an old steel mill. And obviously we're talking about a building that is very dilapidated, very probably has pockets that are open, which you can kind of see through each floor, I would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously parts of walls that were missing, which allowed you guys to kind of do what you did.
I don't know. I'm sure it was for the steel making process. Like in the very, very bottom, it had this tunnel. I didn't go in it because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to pull my big butt out of there. They went in it. They said it was super cold. It went the length of the building, maybe longer. I had to be filled with, I would say smelting material or whatever, even the liquid metal at one point. But something I also didn't mention is there is a riverside park that's almost like a state park called Mill Creek Park that's just very close to that, miles away, that follows the Mahoning River that goes through the park, and the Mahoning River goes all the way down through the downtown area and through the steel mill area. That it could have easily been up in this Mill Creek Park and followed the water all the way through down to the steel mill area. Or it makes you wonder, you always hear about dogmen specifically being around like Indian burial mounds. Maybe there was a burial mound around there somewhere that they had built over, I don't know, maybe. But Ohio is definitely one of those states that has a ton of burial mounds in it.
Yeah. I apologize because, like I said, your story had such an impact on me that I'm kind of like, when it comes to like, when it comes to asking the really good questions, I'm like, okay, it's one of those things where I feel like you gave so much detail and really spilled out the story. I feel like this is more discussion versus like, well, what was this like? Because some people.
You're not the first to say that to me, and I think that's why I've happily looked at a lot of comments through the last year and a half, 2 years that I've talked about it, and I've never seen one yet where people have been like, yeah, right. Everybody has said, and I'm happy about the fact that I've given people a sense of believability because, I'm being 100% honest with everyone. I have no reason to lie, Josh. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I've made friends with you. I appreciate that you and I have started a friendship. I have no reason to lie about this shit. This stuff really went down, man. And I hope I relay the believability because I'm telling it from firsthand experience and I'm giving my emotions in this. And I'm, honest to God, nauseated right now from telling that story again because it brings me back.
How did you cope with this experience after?
I went to my priest. Probably I asked my dad to take me there. He knew why. My dad, after a while, started trying to be there as much as he could for me, but I don't think he really knew how to do that. I still to this day have some PTSD from it. Obviously I'm sweating. My shirt, you can see it. It's wet. Like it's wet. I don't know if you can see that, but I don't know. I've just tried to deal with it through the years as much as I could. I went to see a priest. I've had anxiety and PTSD problems, not only from that, but from some of my health issues. So I've been on different antidepressants and stuff for years that start from that. Yeah. And not many of them have ever done anything for me.
You had mentioned that, which is really interesting that you mentioned the train and then look back there's two things I want to touch upon before I forget. Cause like, I'm so in the zone with you that I don't want to trail off. The first thing I want to talk about is when you looked into its eyes, and I want to talk about like, did you perceive any intelligence and what that was like? So let's touch that. And then remind me that the second part is I want to talk about as it left and it kind of like morphed into a shadow apparition and then vanished. So let's talk about the eyes and the intelligence first. What, if anything, can you tell me about that?
I definitely got a sense that it knew, what was going on. It had an intelligence. I truly believe that it threw that infrasound at us outside to cause us problems, to make us have issues. I think it wanted to get rid of us because it did not expect us to be there. It was surprised. And when my buddy had hit that makeshift wall and it across the concrete and it looked at us, its eyes got real wide at first. Like it was like, whoa, okay. And then it got the fierce look on its face. Like, what are you doing here? And why are you looking at me? And it gave me a sense that it wanted to remove us, and it wasn't happy we were there. Things like, it sniffed the air and it looked right at us and it growled and it looked at the stairs and it looked back at us almost to kind of say, I know how to get to you and I'm coming. And it went and it hit the stairs and it flew up the stairs like it was barely touching the ground. It was moving so fast. And, one of the things I didn't touch on is, it moved a lot like a panther or a great cat does, like real smooth and beautiful almost, even though it's scary, fluid, has a beauty to it. Yeah, almost like it's liquid metal or oil or something. And it just just moved, just and it transitioned from 4 to 2 and back. So simple. I've heard stories like These Woods Are Haunted. Have you ever watched that show on Discovery Plus? You know, the one guy that was in the swamp and saw the 3 dog men, and he said when it stood up, it popped. Its joints were popping, and other people have talked about popping noises, wondering if it's not joints, if it's these things coming through a portal or something. I don't know. I heard no noise. It did not look like it had any issue standing on 2 legs. It was as happy on 2 as it was on 4. And it definitely showed intelligence in its eyes. It knew where we were. It knew how to get to us. It had no problem doing it. And it almost seemed at first that it was almost enjoying scaring us, almost like there was almost like a sick pleasure it was getting from coming for us. Wow. And it made it almost made it seem like it was drawing it out. And you hear, some of those messed up stories about.
Okay. This part we're skipping over. Okay. He does discuss messed up things. For animal lovers, he doesn't really get into it. He just kind of hints at it. However, the host kind of takes it to a place that doesn't have anything to do with this and is very disturbing to listen to. So we're just going to move forward past that part.
Like a giant shadow. It just barely shaped like the creature that it was. So it just was like shaped like that huge thing, dog man on all 4s running down. It hits that last set of stairs and then just barely shaped like it and shadow out the wall, and it's gone. And that's what happened. And we all went over it. We all went over this for years with each other. And each one of us were standing at a different angle. So, what I'm telling you is it's like a grouping of what each one of us saw put together. So I saw a bulk of it, but there were little pieces here and there that I've added into my experience that we spoke of together through the years. Yeah, but you know what I saw, Matt? This is what I saw from where I was standing. Oh, really? Okay. Then you didn't see this. No, there were 2 of us that saw that cloak out happen with its left front arm, paw, whatever. And the other 2 didn't see that, but the other 2 had noticed, like the shape of its hands. Like I never saw any claws. My one buddy said he saw shine of claws. He also agreed, like the length of the hands, and we both said to each other in unison. I remember when we were talking about it, raccoon, and we both said raccoon hands at the same time. And, my one other buddy had talked with me. I noticed a little bit of the rudder-like kind of motion of the tail when it was running up the stairs, and he noticed that too. And he said when it turned to the right, so when it was closest to the wall, he said, I noticed more than ever its tail bent and turned to the left, almost like a rudder, helping it, stay even keel on the stairs and go up better. So it was just little things like that. We all saw basically the same stuff, just tiny little snippets. Each one of us saw from a little different angle that made the experience more detailed for all of us.
When that thing cloaked, it reminds me of, like you said, of the Predator and on all the other stories that have come out over the last few years especially, and then hearing it even from Josh is just people seeing these entities coming out of portals and going in and out of cloaking. And it's so weird because if you were to talk about this not even 5, 10, 20 years ago, it sounds like you're talking about a science fiction film. There's just no way this could even represent our reality in any way. And so it's like, how do you even process what you experience? I mean, this is also a rhetorical question as well as it's an actual question to you. It's like, how do you begin to even process, other than like try to cope with it and tell people about it, but like how do you internalize that and be like, this really happened? Like, oh my gosh. And then to understand that there's things like this out there, and then hearing all these other stories to validate that. Like, how does that feel? Probably confusing.
It's horrifying. It's a very lonely feeling. And I died, like I would just felt so lonely and alone and just, even though my buddies, but we weren't living together. So when we're not together, I'm by myself. So I'm laying, I can't tell you how many times over the years, we lived in a big old house on the north side of Youngstown. We had in the basement, those set of stairs that, like behind it, something could be sitting and could reach out and grab you. I used to book up those stairs. Even as a teenager, I would run up those stairs because I would be freaked out and thinking this thing was under the stairs or something. So I've had issues for years with this.
I mean, I can imagine. They felt like their lives were in danger. And being that age... And anyone, you would really have to be careful about who you talk to about it, because like his father's friend was saying, like, yeah, people are going to think you're nuts, that you've lost it, And
it took me a while to decide to tell this. And if it wasn't for me just watching YouTube and watching stuff like yours and the other channels, I wouldn't have finally said, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to tell it really happened. I'm not going to hide this anymore.
Well, my goal, I'm not ending it right here, by the way, but I want to say that my goal is that we can get thousands of people to hear your story. And, it's like with the Joe Barger thing. There's a lot of people that say, well, and listen, I get it. But at the same time, there are thousands of other people who most of the time are not going to comment or say anything. They're going to see that. They're going to be affected by it. Like, oh my gosh, there's someone else like me. Now I can finally come out with what that I experienced.
I agree.
And so, or at least to feel that, hey, they're not alone, or at least to be aware. Like, oh wow, like there's something, because when you're more aware. Yeah, go ahead.
Josh, you've heard too, I'm sure, all of, especially lately over the last few years about, people in government and things that are coming out talking about things, saying how the movie industry is purposely giving us snippets of real information.
Like
people
hinting.
think it's all science fiction, but there's a lot of reality in some of these movies that are being put out. I 100% believe it now.
Yep. Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you too. So this obviously had what are we, June, July? Because you mentioned going into the next.
Yeah. So we had got out at the end of May, I would say. So this would be the beginning of June, mid-June.
Okay. So right. So it's dark out. You guys are in this. You said outcropping. How did you guys?
It's kind of like almost like a patio almost, but it used to be. There used to be stairs that walked up from the outside, and I'm sure there was like concrete underneath it as well. It had fallen away, and the stairs had fallen away. So it was just this messy outcropping of concrete that we were standing on, that we went outside to see what these wild dogs were barking about, and that's where it happened.
So how were you able to see anything with it being so dark?
It was just, besides the light coming from inside. So when I told you how high this pile was, probably 15, 20 feet off the ground, only 2 rows of these metal whatevers, I'll find out what they are someday. That's like a goal of mine, to know what they were. They were probably, I'd say, 3.5 feet high. So we had 2 rows of them, so about 6, 7 feet high. So the fire was throwing massive amount of light. Oh, there was probably above those 2 rows, there was probably another good 8 feet of just open air on this huge wall. So the light from the fire was going out. And when anything was at the top, be it a dog or anything at the top of this pile, you're getting light from the fire. So it was really lighting. Well. Yeah, we did. And it was only 15 to 25 feet at the most from us. So
that's too close.
It was a clear night, and the fire was throwing some good light on there, and it just happened to be right at the right spot, and we were getting a decent view of it. And then when it came in, then we saw everything. It was like, holy fuck, are you kidding me?
So
and that's
once it was on the pile, I saw you guys, looked at each one of you. I'm trying to remember, how did you say it went from the top of the pile to going in, or did it just vanish? Or did you guys run away? I'm trying to remember.
No, it took 2 steps from us after it stood up, and it threw that infrasound at us. And after it took the second step, my one buddy that was behind me to my left, who had lost his shit, he ran in first. And we all kind of looked and saw him, and we all followed suit. It was a sloppy run because, like I had told you, I felt like my legs were in quicksand. They felt like they didn't want to work. So it was sloppy, running in, hitting the wall, running up the stairs, almost falling on ourselves. And, we got up to that third floor, and it wasn't a fast run up. It took, a little bit of time to get up there, and then it came in. I think it watched us from outside.
Wow.
Because standing on the top of that, you could have seen straight in above that makeshift wall, and you could see those stairs. So I'm sure it watched us run up the stairs, and then it started coming in. And then we had got to the third floor. I think we were out of sight. It came in, it was sniffing around, and it finally just caught a scent. Because, wind was whipping in that building every which way. And I just think finally from the fire, and it just finally caught us, and it snapped its head up and it looked right at us.
It didn't pay any attention to the fire?
Not really. No, it kept its distance. I would say it probably came within 3 feet at the most from the fire. It was close to it, but it didn't.
I guess what I'm asking is, when it appeared over the, I guess we'll call it the Coke, right? And it was watching where the dogs were, just had, I'm assuming, thrown the dogs and they ran away. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, hey, why is there a fire burning?
No, it wasn't paying any attention to us at all. It was watching them. It was zoned in on those dogs because they attacked it. And I think it protected itself and it took care of business. And then it was basically letting them know it was marking its territory. And then it heard the sound, and it looked at us, and it did. It initially for a split second was like, what? And then it was on.
That's so animal-like to do that too.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was shock, then anger.
One of the things that comes to my mind is the Hexam head case. And I don't know how familiar you are with that.
Okay, yeah, this guy tends to kind of go off topic a little bit. I don't know why. So I will show you now. It's a shorts video from Matt Empsch. And it's when he goes back to the location. It's a short, so it's short. So let me bring that up for us. Yeah, he does go back. And this was recent. This was, let me check the date. September 30th. So yeah, it was like not even 2 weeks ago. He went back. Here we go.
So this is the area that we had our experience when I was younger. This is where the Jeanette blast furnace used to be. Just beyond those trees is the Mahoning River, where I believe that creature or creatures along its, or creatures that are the same as it, maybe even same family, followed the Mahoning River from Mill Creek Park, in my opinion, which would be that way. To my left, to my right, you can see the highway, and that used to be the old highway that you could take to drive through and go up Briar Hill, which would be over that way, but it is no longer there. Briar Hill is closed off. You can see the new steel mill over that way. And that's why I know exactly where we are. Feels really strange to be here. I was nervous coming down here with David Wolf. He's flying the drone right now, and I've had a nervous stomach all day. My wife can attest. She's been asking me all day what's wrong. I've just been thinking about coming down here. And I got really nervous once we got out of the cars and I saw where we were. It's strange being here. I'm getting flashes in my mind of that night, that life-changing event that occurred that I will never forget. And it's getting darker, and we might stay until the sun goes down and check it out, see if maybe we could see anything. I did come armed. I have my mace on me and my gun's in the car. So this is it, guys.
Would you have gone back? Now, it's 35 years later, but remember, he had that dream as an adult where it was warning him to stop talking about it. You took a picture of your woodpile years ago and put it on Facebook. One of your friends circled an old-fashioned lady in the picture. Oh yeah, that's a phenomenon, seeing faces and things. Yep. Mm-hmm. He should get a canoe and go down the river at night. You can do that. That's crazy. I think that sounds crazy. So what did you guys think of Matt's story? What do you think? I feel like I believe him and I believe Roy, but still I'm a little skeptical. Like I'm a little, because I don't know. And I'm not one of those people that like, oh, I absolutely have to see it for myself to believe it. Like if there's enough evidence, if there's, then I can say, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt, right? But like, I believe him. I believe the other guy, but like an actual dog man, and like, is it supernatural? Does it go between different realms, in and out of portals? You don't believe him, FW11. Okay. Pareidolia, that's right. Yep. You're one of those people that see faces. Yeah. I used to have kind of an issue with that. I just don't look. Yeah. It got a little weird. Yeah. Creepy, skeptic, but yeah. Like, and especially the way that both of them describe like how it felt to see them and what they did. And I guess I would want to hear more stories about it. I believe that they experience what they're saying. I just don't know if the creature itself is something I fully believe in. Yeah, I'm the same way, I think. I'm just grateful I don't have a similar experience. Oh, yeah. I'd rather sit here and be like, oh, yeah, cool story, bro. Like, yeah, I believe you. But, I mean, I feel very fortunate to be in that position because, some of us, there were like 75% of us who have had a quote unquote supernatural experience. And I don't know about, you guys who have had them. I kind of wish I never had. And there are people who want to have one. And I think those people are crazy. The Belief Hole podcast covers dogmen a lot. Really? Thank you, human beings. I'll definitely look into that. The Belief Hole. The Belief Hole? Suspend your belief, huh? Never seen anything weird, so it's hard to believe. Yeah. Like, I've seen lots of things, but not like a cryptid, I guess. You've had many paranormal experiences, but none like this? Yeah, same. You think there are veils, Patricia? Yeah. And I wonder, too, I think dogmen have been documented like a century ago. But I wonder, how CERN, they opened that portal, like maybe things are coming through that. Maybe. You don't question that both men had the experience. And there are definitely similarities in some of the details, dogman or something else. I don't know. Yep. That's true, Debbie. There's more things out there than what we'll ever know. So true. Yeah. You have stories you tend to keep them to yourself because people don't believe them? Oh. There could be so much around us we can't sense with our human senses. True. Some people just aren't open to it, like at all. At what point do the stories described sound so similar that you start to wonder if it's only the power of suggestion among a group of people? Yeah. FW11 says, I experienced supernatural. I don't believe because he went back. So you're saying that like this situation was so, the way he tells it was so absolutely petrifying. Why would you go back to that spot? I can kind of see, and I don't know what his reason is exactly, but I can kind of see like maybe wanting to make peace within your own head. Like, okay, here's the place. So the building is demolished. There's nothing here anymore. And to kind of overcome a fear of the place. Or felt drawn back. That's a possibility. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know anything about skinwalkers at all. I mean, I've experienced bad things in places, but I had to go back, you know? So I would just pray before I went in. I did a project on hallucinations, says Toasty, all types, to see if there was any way to tell if they were actual experience or just hallucinations, was using the other dimensions theory. And what were your findings? Were you taking the hallucinogenics to see? You personally wouldn't have went back, Debbie, but I do believe there's something drawing him there. What it is, I don't know, but I do believe it's something, yeah. And to keep talking about it, too, you know? I feel like he's trying to come to terms with his experience and reaching out to talk about it, finding other people who've experienced the same thing, and just trying to make sense of it, maybe. Weirdly enough, your brain can't tell if a hallucination is false or not. Oh, wow. So there's no proof that these things aren't real. Oh, wow. That's scary. That's scary to think. Wow. Well, I hope you enjoyed Creepy Thursday today. Definitely need breaks from the girls from time to time. I'm sure you do as well. And, yeah. I just, you know, there's only, I don't know. I get burnt out on Chantal a lot. So it's just a bunch of nothing most of the time with her. Yep, schizophrenia can cause hallucinations. Absolutely. Yep. You woke your husband up to tell him from sleep, telling him, babe, there's a ghost in front of my face, slapping his arms. He got up, ran across the bed, turned the bathroom light on, and told me to leave the light on. Yeah, Toasty, my pleasure. Yeah, simply me. I have to, because I like going live and talking with you guys and seeing you guys, but it's like, when it's under, I feel like it's always like, I wish we didn't have to meet under these circumstances when it's Chantal, you know? Like, oh, we gotta deal with her in the background, I guess, but yeah. That's awesome, Becky W. I'm glad you enjoyed. Debbie says, yeah, I mean, there were 4 people involved and now some of them are gone. It's just him and one other person. He has no one to talk to about this, so I think it plays on his mind a lot. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. We'll definitely do it again. I've got a plethora of these stories for sure. So be sure to check out Matt Emch's channel. It's pinned to the top of the chat. Check him out. Also, we just watched this video that we just saw on What Lurks Beneath. And that's a pretty popular channel. Sounds like a lot of you already know it. What Lurks Beneath.
Things that we had been taught are meant.
Okay. Let me give you that link also. You're an open-minded skeptic, Magwencia, but I like hearing people's stories and I try to keep an open mind. Eyewitness accounts are always questionable and problematic. Okay. You're at work and here comes the vacuum tater tot hot dish. She has been more insufferable than usual. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. I'm glad you guys like it. Yeah. There's definitely more to come for sure. Everyone, thanks again. Awesome to see you. I hope we'll see you tomorrow actually for Live on Patrol, Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern on the Civil Owl Patrol channel. So I hope to see you over there. I'll be sure to check their Facebook page to make sure they are actually streaming tomorrow night this time. So I hope to see you tomorrow night, maybe even before then. Okay, everybody, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your night. Bye-bye.